Hey there, story lovers. Welcome to the Storytelling Podcast, your cozy corner for captivating tales. I'm your host, Alejandra, and welcome back to our storytelling campfire for this part two of the top creepy urban myths. Part one was last week, so make sure you listen to it first. So sit down by the fire, grab your snacks and drinks, and hold on tight because this episode is immersive. It's better for you to listen it with your headphones while dimming the light for a little ambience. But before we start, I would like to ask for your support and click on the follow or the subscribe button if you're hearing this episode on YouTube with a visual episode or any podcast platform. I would really appreciate that and thank you for the lovely reviews you have been leaving on the podcast. It means the world to me. So let's get started. Now, a warning, my fellow listeners. Nothing tops up like the Wendigo stories. The Wendigo looms large in the Algonquian folklore, one of the most populous North American indigenous tribe with their own language that have many warning tales. And I'm sorry if I'm saying the Algonquian wrongly. The Wendigo tales are tangled up with the hunger, greed, and this wild, endless craving for human flesh. Folks say that it captures the brutality of winter and starvation, kind of a warning about where unchecked excess and bad choices might lead. Our story begins deep in the unforgiving boreal forests, where winter holds the land in an icy grip for months on end. Elias, a lone fur trapper, found himself stranded. An early brutal blizzard that had swept through, burying his cabin and under a feet of snow, cutting him off from the nearest settlement. His supplies dwindled with each passing, bitter cold day. The hunger, a dull ache at first, but sharpening into a gnawing, desperate beast. He tried to hunt, but the forest was eerily silent, devoid of game. The cold seeped into his bones, and the isolation began to play tricks on his mind. He heard whispers in the wind, faint at first, that growing clearer, urging him, tempting him with unspeakable thoughts. Just a little longer, they seemed to hiss, and you'll have no choice. One evening, at the last sliver of sun dipped down on the snow-laden horizon, casting a long skeletal shadows, Elias saw it. A figure, impossibly tall and gaunt, moving with an unnatural jerky grace through the trees. Its skin was stretched to protruding bones, its eyes were sunk and burning with a malevolent, hungry light. It was barely human, more a twisted parody, its limbs elongated, its breath visible as icy plumes in the frigid air. An absolute terror mixed with cold gripped Elias. He knew what it was. It was a Wendigo. Not just a creature, but a horrifying manifestation of human desperation, a warning against the ultimate taboo. It was the spirit of those who succumbed to cannibalism in the face of starvation, forever cursed with an insatiable hunger, forever seeking human flesh. He scrambled back into his cabin, slamming the heavy wooden door shut and burying it with a trembling hand. He peered through a crack in the frost-covered window, his breath fogging the glass. The Wendigo was there, standing motionless, its head cocked as if it was listening. Its body seemed to shimmer, almost translucent against the snow, yet radiating in an intense cold that Elias could even feel within the thick walls of his cabin. Then it moved, not towards the door, but around the cabin, slowly, deliberately, its long clawed fingers scraping through the logs, a sound that grated on Elias' nerves like fingernails on chalkboard. He could hear its ragged, wheezing breath, a sound that promised an unending, agonizing hunger. The whispers returned, louder now, inside his head, mingling with the Wendigo's presence outside. Just one bite, just a taste. It's so easy. You're so hungry. Elias clutched his head, fighting the insidious suggestions, fighting the gnawing emptiness on his stomach. He knew the Wendigo didn't just kill, it corrupted, it transformed. He spent the night huddled by the dying embers of his fire, listening to the scraped, the breathing, the whispers. He didn't know if the Wendigo left or if it simply faded with the dawn. When the sun finally rose, painting the snow in pale hues, the creature was gone. Elias eventually made it back to the civilization, gaunt and frostbitten but alive. He never spoke of what he saw and what he heard, but sometimes, on the coldest winter nights, when the wind howled like a hungry beast, he would feel a familiar, chilling emptiness deep within his own gut, and he would hear the faint, insidious whispers forever reminding him of the thin line between survival and transformation. I told you nothing tops the Wendigo tales, and from all of our tales, I shiver when I hear about them. To become a Wendigo, according to tales, you must engage in cannibalism, and you also need to be a greedy, selfish person. You know, the devil inside of you. Thank goodness we have our warming fire, because our next story is about the Bunnyman. You might have seen the masks or even video games with a character called and dressed as the Bunnyman. It's not cute or even a cuddly one. It's one of those weird, chilling legends that sticks with you, especially if you're from Fairfax County in the US. It started in the mid 1900s, and honestly, the stories I've just found just keeps getting stranger and stranger. This is a tale about four friends. Our story begins on a crisp October night, the air thick with the scent of fallen leaves and the nervous energy of Halloween approaching. Four friends, Liam, Maria, Sam, and Lily, piled into Liam's beat up sedan. Their destination? Colchester Overpass, more infamously known as Bunny Man Bridge. It was a rite of passage for local teens and a daring pilgrimage to the site of the legends. There were many stories. A deranged Asylum escapee in a bunny suit, wielding an axe, terrorizing everyone and anyone who dared to trespass his territory. Some said he was an escaped convict, others a man driven by mad isolation from the woods. Regardless the origin, the core of the legend was the same: stay away from the bridge after dark. Liam, the ever so skeptic, laughed as they drove down the winding, unlit road. It's just an urban legend, guys. Probably some local kids trying to scare people. Tell that to the police reports, Lily retorted, her voice a little too high. People actually saw him, and those dead rabbits hanging from the bridge. A shiver ran down Sam's spine. Okay, okay, let's just get there, take a picture, and just get out. As they approached the narrow stone overpass, the air grew heavy. The chirping of crickets seemed to cease, replaced by this unnatural silence. Liam killed the headlights and plunging them into near total darkness, illuminated only by the faint glow of the moon. The bridge loomed ahead, a dark, ominous tunnel. Did you hear that? Maria whispered, clutching Sam's arm. A soft, rhythm thudding echoed from beneath the bridge, like something heavy being dragged. Then a low, guttural growl, too deep for an animal and too inhuman for a person. Liam fumbled for his phone, trying to turn on the flashlight. Just as the beam flickered to life, a shadow detached itself from the darkness beneath the arch. It was tall, impossibly so, and its silhouette was disturbingly familiar. Two long, pointed ears rose from its head, and in one hand, something glinted dully in the faint moonlight. It was an axe. The figure took a single, deliberate step forward, its head cocked in an unnatural angle. Though they couldn't make it out the details in the gloom, the sheer presence of it, the chilling realization of the rabbit ears and the axe was enough. Liam didn't hesitate. He jammed the key into the ignition, the engine roaring to life. He slammed the car into reverse, tires spitting the grave as he spun around, speeding away from the bridge within a second glance. They drove for miles in terrified silence, and the image of that looming, bunny-eared shadow burning into their minds. They never saw him clearly, never heard him speak. But the chilling encounter at Bunnyman Bridge was enough. The legend wasn't just a story anymore. It was terrifying reality, a macabre mystery lurking in the woods of Fairfax County, forever waiting for the curious to dare visit to his domain. If you think that this wasn't scary, think again, close your eyes, and hear the story again. Because sometimes we don't even need to be caught by an urban legend, but actually just to see it will change your life. Same as the terrifying story that I'm going to tell now about Teke Teke and the terrifying Japanese ghost. Teke Teke is a staple in Japanese ghost stories, with a reputation for vengeance and a knack for sending chills down your spine. Her tale started out as an urban legend, but keeps popping out in all sorts of places. I told you before, this creeped me out, and I'm the storyteller. But there is something in Asian tales that some scary truth, but please don't look back now. Our story centers on Hiroshi, a diligent university student walking home from a late night study session. The city was quiet, most shops shuttered, and the last train had long since passed. He took a shortcut through a dimly lit pedestrian tunnel that ran beneath the old railway tracks, a path he'd used countless times. The air in the tunnel was unusually cold, despite the mild evening. Hiroshi pulled his jacket tighter, his footsteps echoing unnervingly in the confined space. He was about halfway through when he heard it, a faint, rhythmic tick, tick sound. It was a metallic scraping, like something heavy being dragged rapidly across concrete. Hiroshi paused, his heart giving a sudden lurch. He looked back and forward, but saw nothing. The sound seemed to be coming from ahead, growing steadily louder. Tick, tick, tick. He tried to rationalize it. A skateboarder? Someone dragging a heavy cart? But the sound was too consistent, too unnatural. It had a horrifying speed to it, something like only a human could manage. Tick, 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 tick. Then, from the darkness at the far end of the tunnel, a shape emerged. It wasn't walking. It was moving with incredible speed, a blur of emotion, propelling itself forward with a horrifying, frantic energy. As it drew closer, Hiroshi's blood ran cold. It was the upper torso of a woman. Her body ended abruptly at the waist, a jagged, bloodied line where her legs should have been. She was propelling herself forward with her arms, her elbows and hands scraping along the concrete, creating that sickening tick-tick sound. Her hair was long and disheveled, falling over a face contorted in a silent scream of agony and rage. Her eyes wide and black, fixed on Hiroshi's with an unnerving intensity. She was moving impossibly faster, closing the distance between them in mere seconds. Hiroshi's mind screamed. This was Teke Teke, the ghost of a girl who had fallen into train tracks and had been severed in half. She was forever condemned to roam, seeking to inflict the same fate on anyone unlucky enough to cross her path. He turned to run, but his legs felt like lead. The Teke Teke sun was right behind him now, an unbearable symphony of horror. He could feel the cold draft of her approach, the desperate, furious energy radiating from her. He fumbled, failing and falling to his knees. Hiroshi never made it out of the tunnel. The next morning, his friends and family searched for him. They found his backpack near the tunnel entrance and a trail of fresh, dark stains leading into the darkness. But Hiroshi was gone. The legend of Teke Teke continues to haunt the quiet corners of Japan, a chilling reminder that some spirits are born with about unimaginable pain, and their vengeance know no sounds. So next time you hear a strange scraping around the dead of the night, remember Hiroshi. And whatever you do, don't look back. And about the Teke Teke, can you imagine what kind of sound was it actually? It was the train tracks. I told you not to look back, didn't I? Our next story is going to take us again to the west. And if you think the Wendigo was creepy, then welcome to the Skinwalker stories. The Skinwalker legends have their roots in Navajo folklore, where they are seen as the ultimate shapeshifters. These supernatural beings have been inspired fear and curiosity, blending old beliefs with new interpretations. Our story begins with Elena, an anthropologist studying ancient Pueblo ruins deep in a remote canyon. She was a woman of science, grounded in logic and reason, but even she couldn't deny the profound, almost spiritual silence in the desert. She'd heard that local whispers about Yinaldoshi, the Navajo term for skinwalkers, malevolent witches who could transform into animals using their power to inflict harm. Elena dismissed them as a fascinating cultural myth, nothing more. One evening, as the sun bled crimson across the mesa, painting the sky in fiery hues, Elena was packing up her equipment. She felt a prickle on the back of her neck, the distinct sensation of being watched. She scanned the horizon, seeing only the vast empty expanse. A lone coyote sat on a distant ridge, its silhouette stark against the fading light. It seemed to be staring directly at her. Elena shivered, attributing it to a sudden drop in temperature. She returned to her modest campsite. She crackled her fire, and she was doing this to ward off that growing unease that she was feeling. The coyote howls, usually a comforting sound in the wilderness, but this time it seemed different, too close, too human, almost like a mocking laugh. Later, as she lay in her tent trying to sleep, she heard it, a soft, rhythmic scratching just outside her canvas wall. It wasn't the sound of an animal, it was too deliberate, too knowing. Then a low, guttural growl, followed by a series of clicks and whistles that sounded eerily like human speech, yet utterly alien. Lena held her breath, her heart pounding. She heard heavy breathing right outside her tent flap. A shadow fell across the canvas, impossibly large, impossibly close. She squeezed her eyes shut, wishing she hadn't scoffed at the legends. Then the scratching stopped. The growling faded. A moment of silence, thick and suffocating, and Elena dared to open her eyes. She heard a rustle, then a heavy thud, as if something large had dropped to all fours. She slowly and cautiously unzipped a tiny corner of her tent flap. What she saw made her blood run cold. Not a coyote, not a bear, but something in between. A creature with the powerful muscle body of a large animal, but its eyes glowed with an unnatural, intelligent malice. As it turned its head, she saw it. A flash of something distinctly human in its features, a grotesque parody of a smile, before it melted back into the shadows, moving with a speed that defied its size. Elena didn't wait. She scrambled out of her tent, leaving everything behind. She ran through the darkness, tripping over rocks and roots, her only thought to escape that chilling presence. She ran until she reached her jeep, until she was speeding down the dirt road, leaving the canyon and its ancient malevolent secrets behind. She never returned to the ruins. Elena, the woman of science, now carried a new understanding, a chilling truth etched into her soul. The skinwalker wasn't just a myth, it was a terrifying reality, a shapeshifter of fear forever roaming the desert, a chilling reminder that some things are beyond human comprehension and best to live undisturbed. Skinwalkers, they actually creep me out because they can be anywhere, of course, in the woods, in the wilderness, in the desert. But you know what is really scary for me? Is that people can create a story, might come from a myth or not, and they create a story that is so dark and evil that everyone thinks is real and people actually bring them alive. I'm telling you the story about Alex and Slenderman. Our story begins with Alex, a quiet but imaginative writer who spent most of his nights immersed in online forums dedicated to creepypastas. You know, those 2000s emails filled with images and fake stories. It was popular back then because we didn't have social media and we used to forward crazy emails to friends and family. But some of them actually became urban legends. He was fascinated by the collective storytelling, the way a chilling idea would spread and evolve across the internet. Among all those tales, one figure captivated him more than any other: the Slenderman. He downloaded these grainy, manipulated photos and read the fabricated accounts of disappearances and devoured the unsettling fan fiction. The image was simply yet profoundly disturbing: an impossibly tall and unnatural thin figure in a dark suit with long, slender limbs and a featureless, blank face. Often tendrils or extra limbs seemed to sprout from its back, and it was the perfect embodiment of silent and watchful dread. Alex started noticing things. First, it was the subtle glitches in his computer screen, fleeting distortions, a flicker of static that seemed to, you know, come into a dark vertical line. Then he sees shadows in his peripheral vision, too tall, too slim, too still, only to vanish when he turned his head. He told himself it was just his imagination, a side effect of too much screen time and too many scary stories. One night, while researching a particular disturbing Slenderman thread, his computer screen froze. The image of a forest, a familiar backdrop for many Slenderman photos, filled his entire display. And there, almost imperceptible at first, standing among the trees, was the figure. Taller than the pines, in dark suit, blending in with the shadows, its faceless head tilted slightly. Alex could feel the cold dread grip him. This wasn't a downloaded image, it was a live feed, somehow from somewhere. The high pitched whine from his computer intensified, piercing his ears. He tried to close the window, but his mouse wouldn't move. He tried to shut down the computer, but the power button was unresponsive. The figure in the screen seemed to shift, to lean forward, as if watching him. The forest only grew darker, and the trees twisted its gnarled skeleton shapes. Alex could feel a pressure building in his head, a dizzying nausea. He felt an intense, overwhelming urge to look away, but his eyes were glued to the screen. Then, from the corners of the image, dark, slender tendrils began to emerge, reaching out from the digital forest towards the edges of his screens, towards him. Alex didn't know what happened next. He must have blacked out. He woke up on the floor, his computer screen shattered, a spiderweb of cracks radiating from the center. He was shaking, drenched in a cold sweat, and the high pitched whine still echoed in his ears even though the computer was dead. He never again touched a creepypasta forum again. He avoided dark alleys, dense woods, and anything that reminded him of a tall, silent figure. The experience left him with a profound and settling understanding. Slenderman wasn't just a story or a collection of images. He was an idea, a fear giving form, capable of crossing the digital divide and leaving a tangible mark on the real world. The digital age had given birth to a new kind of boogeyman, one that could find you not just in the dark, but through every screen that we hold so dear. Did you know about the Slenderman base story? I bet you will dream about it today. But if you think that Slenderman was created, let me tell you another story. And this is like a modern classic. Is the Jersey Devil. It has hoofs, it has a goat head, it has bat wings. It's the whole shebang, whole deal. Legend says it was born in 1735 to Mother Leeds, a cursed woman who became a demon. Our story takes us to the heart of Pinelands, a vast ancient forest known for its unique ecosystem and even more unique mysteries. It was a very hot summer night, the kind where the air hung heavy with humidity and the scent of pine. Mark and Jessica was these two avid campers that decided to spend the weekend deep into the woods. You know, a little bit of solitude away from the city's glare. They heard the local tales of the Leeds Devil, or as it was sometimes called, a monstrous winged beast with a horse's head and glowing red eyes. But they laughed and dismissed him as, a local colorful story. They set up their tents near a small secluded bog. The only sounds that they could hear was the chirping of crickets and the distant croaking of frogs. As the darkness deepened, a strange unease settled over the camp. The usual forest sounds seemed to diminish, replaced by an unnatural quiet. Around midnight, a sound shattered the stillness. It was a high pitched, piercing shriek, anything unlike they ever heard of. It wasn't an animal cry, it was too raw, too full of malevolence. It seemed to echo through the dense trees and coming from everywhere and nowhere at once. Jessica clenched to Mark's arm, her eyes wide in fear. What was that? She whispered, her voice trembling. Mark thought, unnerved, tried to sound brave. It's probably just a fox or something. But even as he spoke, he knew it wasn't. Then came another sound, a heavy, irregular thudding, like something large moving clumsily through the underbrush, accompanied by a leathery flapping. The thudding grew closer, circling their campsite. They huddled together in the tent, barely breathing. The flapping sound intensified, directly overhead now, followed by a sickening thump on the ground just outside. A foul, sulphurous odor, like burned matches and damp earth, seemed to flow in the air. Through the thin canvas, they saw it. A dark, impossibly tall shadow fell across their tent, illuminated faintly by the moonlight filtering through the trees. Two points of crimson like embers glowed in the darkness just beyond the canvas. The tent fabric rippled as something brushed against it, Then a low, guttural snort, followed by a sudden and powerful gust of wind that nearly ripped the tent from its moorings. The flapping sound grew louder, more frantic, and they heard the distinct snap of a tree branch. Mark, driven by a desperate surge of adrenaline, fumbled for his flashlight and switched it on, aiming at the tent wall. The beam cut through the canvas, briefly illuminating a grotesque silhouette. A long horse like head, bat like wings, and cloven hooves. The glowing red eyes were fixed on them. They screamed, a unified cry of pure terror. Mark scrambled for the tent zipper, tearing it open. They burst out, abandoning everything, running blindly through the woods, not daring to look back. They ran until their lungs burned, until the sounds of the pinelands faded behind them, until they reached the safety of their car and sped away. They never saw the Jersey Devil clearly, never understood its true form. But the chilling encounter in the pinelands was enough. The legend wasn't just a story anymore, it was a terrifying reality, a cryptive of fear, forever lurking in the shadows of New Jersey, a chilling reminder that some places hold secrets too ancient, too monstrous, to be dismissed as mere folklore. And for our last campfire story, and because we need our beauty sleep, we go to Africa and talk about Kongamato. Kongamato is this wild legendary creature that people say lurks from the swamps and lakes of Africa, mostly in Zambia. Locals describe it as this massive, bird like beast, kind of a pterosaur, with a wingspan that will make you do a double take, and a mouth full of razor sharp teeth. Are you ready? Our story takes us to the remote Bangweolo swamps of Zambia, a labyrinthine wilderness of water, reeds, ancient trees, where few outsiders dare to venture. Dr. Aris Thorne, a renowned cryptologist, had spent weeks navigating its treacherous waterways. He was a man of logic, driven by scientific inquiry, but even he felt the oppressive weight of the swamp's primeval silence, a silence that hinted at secrets older than humanity. He was searching for evidence of the Kongamato, a creature described by locals as a large, bat like reptile, a living pterosaur. Most scientists scoffed, but Aris had a hunch. One very hot afternoon, as the sun went down, Aris guided his small dugout canoe through a particularly dense section of papyrus. The air was thick, and the only sounds were a dripping of water from his paddle and the distant croak of a bullfrog. Suddenly, a shadow, impossibly fast, fell over him. He looked up, squinting against the glare. Nothing but the endlessly blue sky. He dismissed it to a large bird, perhaps an eagle. But then a sound. A leathery flapping, deep and resonant like sails snapping in a storm, followed by a guttural, reptilian shriek that seemed to rip through the very fabric of the air. Ares froze, paddled suspended in the water. The flapping grew louder, accompanied by a powerful rush of wind that stirred the reeds around his canoe. He looked around frantically, his heart hammering against him. Then it emerged from behind the towering clusters of trees, a silhouette against the blinding sun. It was immense. Its wings, leathery and dark, spanned what seemed like 20 feet, propelling a body that was undeniably reptilian. A long, toothy beak jutted from its head, and its eyes, though too far to discern clearly, radiated an ancient, predatory intelligence. It was a creature from a forgotten age, a living dinosaur. The Kongamato swooped low, directly over Ares' canoe. He felt the sheer force of the displaced air, the distant whoosh of its passage. Creature let out another ear splitting shriek, a sound of raw, untamed wilderness. And then, with a few more powerful beats of its wings, it vanished into the distant haze, leaving only ripples in the water and the lingering scent of something ancient and wild. Ares didn't hesitate. He paddled back to the way he came, his arms aching, his mind reeling. He didn't stop until he reached the safety of his base camp. His scientific skepticism shattered, replaced by profound, chilling awe. He never captured a photograph, never found a bone, but the image of that colossal, winged shadow against the African sky and the sound of its prehistoric shriek were etched into his memory forever. The Kongamata is not just a legend, it's real, a living fossil soaring through the untouched corners of our world, a chilling reminder that these mysteries should be kept in the past. Phew, and poor Aris never got his facts to show to his community of scientists. But it is what it is, and there are a lot of stories about Kongamatos online if you want to search about it. And I close the campfire of the storytelling for today. I do truly appreciate you guys, and I do hope that you have liked these two very large episodes of Urban Legends. It was supposed to be a top 10, but I think that we have like a top 12 or 13. And I hope that you like this. This is a very different one. It is such a couple of stories that I grabbed from here and there online. And as always, we will have a new episode next week. And I love to create these immersive, creepy, and spooky stories. Let me know if you would like more spooky stories about this. And, this was the compilations of this week. And next week, we will have a new episode, very completely different, about the real story about the Lunar Society. And thank you very much. This was the episode for the Storytelling Podcast. And thank you for listening. And please remember that if you'd like to send your stories or special topics to be shared in the next episodes, please send it to the Storytelling Podcast 8080 at gmail.com or follow me on social media at the Storytelling Podcast Official. But before we go, if you haven't done already, I would love for you to click on the follow or subscribe button and see you on the next episode and sleep tight if you can.